LatAm in its future than you yourself as a Latin American investor, which is a big signal as well.
I love that signal.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important one. I want to just throw out a contrarian viewpoint. I mean, what if SoftBank's not such a good thing? I mean, and I'll just throw a couple of points that I've been noticing. If you look at the India market, which they entered aggressively in 2016, there have been some companies that have been heavily funded that have had significant problems because of the overfunding. Change of investment thesis. SoftBank used to be grow at any cost. And since WeWork, there's been a shift in perspective where it is now we want you to be profitable. And that really changes the dynamic of a company that receives funding if your metrics change. And speaking of metrics, they have metrics that are not traditionally, that are not measured by traditional financial standards. So I think there's one gross marketing something or another, but it's, they do have some metrics that are unusual. And there are other their departures. I think 4 of their top executives or portfolio managers of the Vision Fund have departed in the last several months. So what could be the red flags of a SoftBank in the region?
I think it has to be, it is related to their scale, to their size, because for example, for us in early stage, if we made a mistake or the founders make a mistake, you can, for example, like the Zoom Pizza thing, that they fire like hundreds of employees. We see the companies that had to fire like 5 people, 15 people a team, but in terms of this scale and the big amounts of money invested, they have to make this adjustment. And also, as Tony said, the catch-up, it was really needed, but it's also super fast. Like, there's a lot of funds like Sequoia that has been there for years, and they didn't even have $1 billion before. And these guys raised like 100 billion, and even if Magayashi-san and all the people involved is really talented, you have like 500 people managing that fund globally, so they're gonna make mistakes, and in terms of that scale, which is billions, they're gonna have these messy things like the IPOs and the Zoom Pizza and a lot of bad stuff that is going on, mistakes, but it's normal because they have been in the market, I think, just like 3 years or 2 years. So they're gonna make these mistakes. Like, for example, us like 4 years before, like when we started, we made terrible mistakes, but it was like, I don't know, 200, 300,000 mistakes, and these are billions mistakes. So it is more.
I want to invite Dan. Are you around? Dan. I want to get a microphone out to Dan. Dan and I were chatting last night, and I'm just adding him into the conversation to see if he has any comment, because from the legal side, he's actually represented some of the companies that have been funded by SoftBank.
Yeah, so one thing that's interesting about SoftBank, in addition to what's been said, is for the first time you're seeing significant secondary liquidity in the market. A couple of recent deals that we were involved with, there was a primary investment where the company received the investment from SoftBank and sometimes others. And then there was a very significant secondary investment where existing shareholders, and in some cases founders as well, would sell significant amounts of money alongside the primary investment, which I think in some ways enhances the ecosystem, because now you have another option for liquidity. But it also creates a bit of a fear in the investment community. So I'd like to hear from the panel, how do you guys view secondary investments and SoftBank's role in that?
I don't know specifically about SoftBank's role on that, but I'm glad that you touched that point, because I think that there's starting to happen. For example, we invested in a company called Yaxi, which was later bought by Cabify, and that way we were able to, we haven't sold it, but if we want to sell our stock today, there's a secondary market for Cabify, and I can sell it in a day, which is another way of making it more healthy for everybody. But there hasn't been that many deals in Mexico where it's getting there, but I hope that continues to happen, because otherwise you can stay in the company forever. I mean, it's not the case in Kio. We've done it on purpose. We've been reinvesting everything for the last 16 years because we want the company to grow at the size that it has grown. And I'm sure that there's a secondary market if we look for it. We haven't looked for it, obviously. But I hope that happens more, and that it becomes much part of the health of the ecosystem in Latin America, not only in Mexico. I think now that there's some companies that are looking what's happening with Rappi, for example. Out of the $5 billion that SoftBank pledged, they already invested $1 billion in Rappi and things like that. So it never happened before until it happened, right? So hopefully this will make it that it continues to happen more. And what Eric was saying about the domino effect from the US, I think the reason why there's some shit out there, there's a reason for that. I think that if they know that I did a very healthy due diligence on a deal and I don't have the time to do it and I trust what you have done, that's why I want to go in with you. But in some cases, obviously the guy that did the original due diligence maybe didn't do the right job, and that will happen. There will be some mistakes like that, that everybody will fall in their faces in one deal. But eventually, hopefully, statistically speaking, there's more of the good ones than the bad ones. And I really want to underline what Lynn said, that this is not a zero-sum game. I mean, there's plenty of potential here. Guadalajara is doing an incredible job on having this very healthy engineering base. We're trying to do the same thing in Querétaro. There's other areas in Mexico that is happening very strongly. And I think now that with all the funds from the US coming, not only SoftBank, but all the other funds coming to the Latin American region,